clearly, moving away from a land and monopoly system, you're going to upset a few people. Now, he had great celebrity because everyone had read his work. He engaged in public debate. He influenced politicians all over the world, people like David Lloyd George, George Bernard Shaw, Winston Churchill, Sun Yat-sen, Leo Tolstoy, Albert Einstein, and millions upon millions of ordinary citizens. In fact, a survey of British parliamentarians in 1906 found that the works of Henry George were more popular than Walter Scott, John Stuart Mill, and even William Shakespeare. So he was clearly a threat from those whose living was creaming off the surplus. And so they were not going to take this lying down and came up with what I think was a brilliant counterattack. If you can't win a debate, then what do? You change its terms. And what they did was essentially to say, well, actually land is not really a distinct factor of production. The rent that you get from owning a site in the centre of London is the same thing as the earnings you'd make from owning a car production facility and building cars and selling them, taking risks and selling them in a competitive market economy. They said the two things were equivalent, and so you should regard land as a type of capital, which clearly it wasn't. This kind of project started with the work of John Bates Clark in the late 19th century and was very much spearheaded by university academics, mainly in the United States, also to a certain extent in the UK. In those days, there wasn't, by the way, such things as academic tenure. Academics could be hired and fired at will, and you were sort of expected to reflect the views of your founder or the person who had contributed to your university endowment. And in those days, J.P. Morgan, Vanderbilt, Wharton, Rockefeller, and so on, all the big titans of corporate America in the 19th century had supported universities. And so doing so, making these arguments was very much in line with their corporate interests. They made a number of other arguments to say that basically markets are always efficient as long as there's competition, and so therefore if there seems to be some rising inequality from one side getting unearned wealth, well, that's okay because markets are efficient.